Hey NYC voters! There's a new way to vote for your city officials in 2021. The City of New York will use the ranked choice voting method for all NYC primaries and special elections for mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council. Ranked choice voting gives New York voters more choice than ever before. Rather than choosing just one candidate, now you have the option to rank up to 5 of your favorite candidates. Here's how it works. Mark your ballot by order of preference, ranking as many or as few candidates as you like. In the first column, fill in the oval next to your first choice candidate, your second choice in the second column, followed by your third, fourth, and fifth choice. At the close of Election Day, all first choice votes are counted. The candidate to receive over 50% of votes wins. If no candidate receives over 50% of the first choice votes, the race moves to round 2. The person with the least number of votes is eliminated. If your first choice candidate does not win and they're eliminated, we then count your second choice vote and add it to the candidate's total. This process continues until we have a winner. Go to vote.nyc to learn more about NYC ranked choice voting and upcoming elections.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaliyah Abraham, the founder of the Black Resource Network. Welcome to Black Politics and Leadership, where we interview several of the candidates running to be mayor of New York City in 2021. Tonight's guest is Ms. Maya Wiley. I'd like to bring in our program with hearing a few words from Ms. Wiley on her history and why she's running.
I'm Maya Wiley. I am running to be the next mayor of New York, and I'm running as a civil rights leader, an advocate, which I've been my whole career, and as a mother of a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old born right here in New York City who don't want to live anywhere else. And what called me into this race, because I am not someone who's ever run for public office before, is that in this crisis that we call COVID, in this crisis that is the Black Lives Matter movement that has been fighting for racial justice and for our lives for so many years, and in a crisis, there was also an affordability crisis that predated COVID, both Black Lives Matter and affordability, and all the struggles that we have had in our community have predated COVID. But COVID hit us, made these problems worse. But here's the thing. We have the opportunity to not just recover from COVID, which we will, we always do, because that's the way we do as New Yorkers. But what we don't do, and what we have never done, is recover all of us, particularly in Black community. And I've been Black all my life. And I know what it's like to go to a segregated, overcrowded, underfunded public elementary school. I know what it's like to watch my neighbors disappear because the rent is too high and folks can't pay it, or because we, like my own family, did not own our homes, which is why we had to move when they became too expensive. These are not new problems for our community. But in this crisis, we have a unique opportunity, and that is to fix them. And I am running because I know we can, but I know it takes a different kind of leadership. It takes a leadership focused on what I will do, which is marshal the resources of the city and the decision-making power of the mayor to create 100,000 new jobs by building what we need built and fixing things we need fixed. And that includes creating more affordable housing we can actually afford. But it also means recognizing we've got homeowners, not just renters. So I know, as someone who has worked as a civil rights lawyer, that we have deed theft, that we have issues with being able to hold on to the houses we've been able to buy in our city. And so I'm both going to increase financial literacy, but I'm also going to make sure that we are fixing the property tax system that is also unfair, particularly to Black and Latino New Yorkers. We are paying too much for our taxes. We can change that, and I will. but it's also recognizing that we have the ability to make our schools excellent for all our kids. So I'm going to hire 2,500 new teachers, because that's one of the ways we are going to bring down our class sizes, but also gives us the opportunity to make sure we have more teachers who look like us, because that's the way our kids learn better and have the kinds of supports in our schools, like mental health support, a social worker in every school, a nurse in every school, but also the trauma-informed care our kids need, because they are traumatized. And that means that we have to make sure they have the resources and supports to be successful. That's not something we've ever done before, but it's something we need to do, and we must. We also have to save our small businesses, and I have a plan for that too, including a $30 million grant program, grants, not loans, for small businesses in hard-hit communities to pay the back debt, have more opportunities to keep the doors open. I'll do more than that, but I will stop there so we can have more discussion. But all I'm telling you is, when Maya Wiley is mayor, it will not be business as usual. It will be Black to the future, though. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wiley. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Elaine B., the host for our question and answer portion.
Yes, appreciate you. Thank you, Ms. Wiley, for taking time off the campaign trail to have a conversation with the Black Resource Network and its over 15,000 members. My name is Alan Barrett. I've been a lifelong member of Southeast Queens, very active. I'm the current criminal justice chair for the NAACP Jamaica branch. We have other members from the Black Resources Network behind us to say hi, everyone. Hello. So, the Black Resource Network was started by Leah Abraham and others to really focus on Black issues in Southeast Queens. I just want to make that clear. We have managed to really organize and gather together some very important individuals to really focus in on key issues. As you know, I just want to give a little context of our congressional district. The congressional district in Southeast Queens is very unique in that it's a predominantly Black district, the only place in the country where Black folks have a higher median income than white folks, the highest density of Black home ownership in the country, and the highest concentrated union density. Ms. Wiley, your experience is very extensive. You are nationally recognized as a racial justice and equity advocate, former counsel to the mayor, chair of the Civilian Complaint Review Board. You work to improve public education as a co-chair of the School Diversity Task Force. You also served as a university professor. And I think one of the favorite things that I pulled out, I really took a look at your accomplishments, and I'm very much impressed and I'm inspired. I'm also a NAACP Next Gen alum. So when I read that you are a veteran of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, my eyes lit up, but thank you for your work. And I guess I just wanted you to get in because I don't want to talk too much. I think the members want to hear from you is, can you share with us, and this is a very poignant question, and as a man, I think it's important for our members to hear. Can you share with us, not just what makes you the right candidate in this moment to lead our city, but I think the membership and us, what we really want to hear is your unique experience as a woman running for citywide office. Because I think people get it twisted that, the experiences of women are the same as men. And I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about your experience and possibly becoming the first woman mayor of New York City.
Well, thank you for that incredibly warm introduction. And I so appreciate you, and I so appreciate the opportunity to be here for all the work that your work represents, which is work that we critically need in every last one of our communities. And thank you for the question, because, we've had 109 mayors in New York City, 109. Only one of them has looked like us, Mayor Dankins, which I will say to anyone is the best mayor we have had, certainly in my lifetime, and I would argue in the history of this city. And we have never had a woman of any race, let alone a Black woman. And what it means in this time, and I'm gonna give you a story, something that I experienced on the subway several months ago. After I announced, I was riding the subway on my way home from an event. sister was sitting down the subway from me and turned and said, Maya Wiley. And I was stunned. I'm just a mom and a New York City resident. I'm not really used to that kind of response. And she went, you're Maya Wiley. She slid down and she said, I am so proud. I am so proud that you are running. And she rode the subway with me for the whole train line. Turned out she was actually doing a lot of work to save Black homeowners in central Brooklyn, because I live in central Brooklyn. We also have a very high rate of Black home ownership and a lot of the similar challenges, of course, as Southeast Queens. And we were talking about those challenges. She happened to be working with a sister that's a law school classmate of mine, found all these connections. She gets off at my stop just because she wants to keep talking. And there's a mother with a little girl. And she starts pointing to the little girl, who of course was Black too. And she starts saying, that could be you. She's going to be our next mayor. And that could be you. Look at her now, because that could be you. And those are those moments, because I know I stand on broad shoulders of so many people who made a way for me that I never even got to thank. Women like Shirley Chisholm, not just unbossed and unbought, but a woman who ran for president saying that she was going to be unapologetically a Black woman. Like, I stand on those shoulders. And what it really means is that at a time when we have 100 large cities in this country, only 8 of them have ever had a Black woman mayor. And New York City is the largest. And it is now a time when we start to recognize that we are not just the pack mules who do all the work, but we are the precious cargo. Every last one of us, we are the precious cargo. And it is time that we had a leadership that both embodies that, acknowledges that, and is running in order to make that reality. And that was the instance in which, I felt that both that incredible gratitude for what has been given to me by so many others, and the obligation that comes with the incredible privilege of public service to actually make that difference reality.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing that. And, definitely. Thank you for that. I think it's important for our membership to hear. They're probably in the comments right now, probably reacting to that. That was great. One thing that struck me about what you said was about the influence that you can have on young people. And I think the next topic, or the next issue rather, is something that I'm sensitive to. And a lot of other members in Southeast Queens are also sensitive. Nelson Mandela once said that children are our greatest treasure. They are our future. And the next topic that I want to discuss is around maternal mortality and complications, and with increasingly that disproportionately affect Black women. New York City has a higher mortality rate compared to the United States as a whole, a tragedy which falls disproportionately on Black and Latinx New Yorkers. So just to give you a little context, a baby born to a mother in Jamaica, Queens is 3 times likely to celebrate his or her first birthday than a baby in Forest Hills, according to a report by the city. I mean, the data is kind of dated back to 2013, but I wonder what the data looks like now. So, Ms. Wiley, yes.
It's bad.
Yes, very. It's terrible. Ms. Wiley, if elected mayor of New York City, can you share with us your plan to prevent infant mortality, but also to improve the health outcomes of Black folks who live in New York City? This is something that you just hear stories of Black women who literally are dying in hospitals. Who don't have the proper care. And I'm just wondering, if you could just share with us, what your plan and your vision is, around protecting.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you raised, because this is a national shame and a local outrage. And when I was at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, my area of work was access to healthcare. And I both sued to keep maternal and child care beds in Harlem, when St. Luke's Hospital was merging with Roosevelt Hospital. And I created the policy agenda for the Leadership Conference of Civil Rights, working under Elaine Jones and Wade Henderson, who were other shoulders I stood upon, who taught me how to lobby for civil rights. And we fought for more of a comprehensive medical package that would help Black women back then. And I also partnered with the Black Women's Health Project. So you're talking something that's near and dear to my heart, as well as work I have done as a civil rights lawyer. And let me tell you, I have a maternal child care plan. You can find it at MayaWileyForMayor.com, along with our other plans. But we put one out explicitly on this issue. So one, I am going to spend over $4 million, $4,350,000 to be exact, to create midwifery wings and directly in our H&H hospitals, our public hospitals, because as those are the hospitals I directly will control as mayor, so that Black women, Latinas have the same options of quality care alternatives available to them, because actually some of the research shows us that with midwives and doulas, those rates go down and we have healthier outcomes. And that's both prenatal care. I had midwives and doulas, and I have 2 children, and I started late. I had my first daughter right before my 37th birthday. I had very healthy births, but I had full control over my birth. And by the way, a Black OBGYN who was extremely supportive of midwifery and doulas and empowering me in my healthcare. That's something that Black people and Black women in particular, when it comes to childbirth, don't get. So we're actually going to create that within our hospital system. I'm going to create that in every single one of our public hospitals, and in Staten Island, a freestanding birthing center, because we don't have an H&H facility there. But I'm also creating, and this is something that's really important to me, I'm creating universal care centers for child and elder care, because we also need more child care in our communities, more affordability. That creates jobs for our people, because women of color have lost the most jobs in this economy, and caregiving jobs. We've been decimated. I'm proud to have the support and endorsement of 1199 SEIU, which represents us and so many of our neighbors. But look, you know, this is a way for us to also co-locate other services, community-based partnerships, and government services, so we can make sure that all of our women are getting what they need and the programs and services we have. So it helps create a one-stop shop center for that. And one of the things that we lost in the last budget, which if I was mayor would have never been cut out of the budget, because I'll cut fat, but I won't cut bone, is that we cut the visiting nurse service. You know, visiting nurses, home nurse visits are a critically important part of that process, both in terms, particularly after a child is born. And that's a critically important time, both in the care for the mother and the child. So I'm going to restore those dollars and grow them. But we're also going to have the Department of Mental Health and Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, which will not only have someone running it that's going to be on mission, and ending health disparities is going to be the mission, that also is tracking which providers are doing well and which providers are not, so that it's both transparent, but we can also identify where the problems are. We know so often it's also bias, racial bias, and that's going to help us locate it, identify it, point to it, and demand that it be fixed.
I wish we had like a couple of hours with you so we could really delve deep into these issues. Thank you for that response. You know, I think one thing too, and I want to say this, my mom is an 1199 member. She has been a nurse for over 25 years. And I really respect this, the reason why I'm in this space. So kudos to you. That union means a lot to me. It's actually responsible for the reason why I can go to college and I've done different things. They're the reason why. So I never forget where my roots are. So I'm pushing for you. I think the one of the other things I wanted to point out, and this is as a Black man, I'm asking you this is, you know, and I don't think people ask this question a lot, but I want to ask you, you know, when we talk about issues, health issues related to Black women, as a brother, if you become mayor, what are some things like Black men like me and others can do to support, push for these particular policies?
Well, being active and engaged is critically important for all of us, including Black men, because it's how we lift up what we need. And I'm a strong believer coming out of the civil rights community, and my parents were civil rights activists too. And my father was at the forefront of the economic justice movement because he thought we weren't doing enough about Black poverty. But one of the reasons I say that is because I was taught that people who are impacted by the problem have to be seen as the experts in the solution. And that's something that has always been a centerpiece of my work. It has been a centerpiece of this campaign. We actually just launched in Queens with Assemblymember Jeff Aubrey, who has endorsed me, as well as Assemblymember Khalil Anderson, who has endorsed me, Assemblymember Michael Blake, the Black Men for Maya. And we did it at the Tennis Center. We did it at the David Dinkins Circle. But one of the things that we were lifting up was actually how active and engaged Black men are in making a difference and making change. And one of the things I said at that launch was, there is a lie out there. There's a lie out there. And that lie is that Black men don't work with and for Black women, and with and for their communities. That is simply untrue. And so all the ways in which Black men should be elevating their voices for the things we need, part of why I'm talking about diversifying teachers is I know the power and importance of having more Black men in our schools, teaching our children, running our schools. Like these are critical, important places for our children to also see our women and men, right? Reflected, but also because it's got to be culturally responsive and responsible. And so I'm looking forward to all the ways in which Black men make heard, both what the priorities and needs are, but also the solutions, because we know we have incredible, creative, innovative people who've been doing so much for so long with so little. And when I'm there, it won't be so little anymore.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate you. And I know, we're coming close to time. I know you're a very busy woman. You're still out on the campaign trail. One of the core pillars of the Black Resource Network and the reason why it was created was to support small businesses in our community. Obviously, COVID-19 has exacerbated some of the issues facing the Black community. African-American entrepreneurs have had to literally close their doors more than twice the rate of white counterparts. So, the members of the Black Resource Network and residents of Southeast Queens, quite frankly, they're tired of empty promises and our community being left behind. So can you share with us your small business platform and what Black business owners in Southeast Queens can expect to win this election and become the first women mayor? And also, the pundits have said, during your tenure, Black people have not gained any significant traction in reference to MWB contracts. And I wanted to give you an opportunity just to clarify, because, people put together things in little sound bites to put together narratives, but we wanted to give you an opportunity to.
Well, I thank you. And I appreciate that. I'm the daughter of a mother who, after my father died, kept food on our table by being a small business owner. So it's also something I personally experienced. And including the power and importance of government contracting, because she was getting government contracts to do affirmative action strategies with government, because that was a way she could keep food on her table and still meet her values and her mission. So let me just start with small businesses and community and then move to MWBE. So we've got a plan already. And I, as someone who organized our neighbors into a volunteer network for Flatbush, Brooklyn, because I knew that all the relief dollars that were going to come down from the government, both the city dollars and the federal, were not going to reach our businesses unless they got direct help and support, because they wouldn't know that the dollars existed. They wouldn't find out how and whether they were eligible and how to access those dollars. So we organized that network, and sure enough, it was very difficult to find the businesses because there's no registry. Once we did, and when we did, and we partnered with our local electeds who were wonderful and helped us connect, but the programs were not designed for our folks. So I've got this $30 million grant fund that I am creating.
Keyword grant, people, members, the Black members.
Grant, not loan, because we can't have to pay it back. You
Yes.
can't, the overhead is too high to think that just opening your doors means you can actually get out from under the debt and keep moving forward. So grants, but these are also set aside grants, right? They are set aside for the communities that have had the highest rates of COVID and impacts of COVID, which is Southeast Queens, is the North Shore of Staten Island, is Northern Manhattan and the South Bronx and Central Brooklyn are our communities. Highest infection rates, highest death rates, highest unemployment rates, highest number of businesses that didn't benefit from other programs. So it's a set aside because those are eligibility is going to start with prioritizing that. So there's not going to be a problem with, I didn't know the money existed and therefore it all got spent before I got in. No. And we're going to prioritize smaller businesses also to start with, because we know our businesses typically have 10 or fewer employees, not 100 or fewer. And so that's a big part of it, but also the red tape, you know, the regulatory red tape, which for so many of our businesses just chokes the life out of them. So we're going to have a fee and fine holiday. We're going to create an office of open space management so we can better do planning on open space and open streets and all those kinds of things to make sure we're not choking off opportunities for our small businesses to recover, but advancing them. And in small business services, we're going to make sure that our programs are also aligning technical assistance and other programs, but in a way that focuses, in a way we don't focus right now, which is economic development. See, right now, it's not really we have the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation, city government, but it's a whole separate thing and it works separate from our small business services. So we're going to actually unite them to think about small businesses as an economic development strategy for our communities. And that's really going to change the way government looks at our small businesses. And on MWBE, I really appreciate the question because I'm going to be the first to say it's abhorrent that we haven't done more contracting with Black and Latino businesses. And let me tell you what happened. So when I in 2014, the mayor asked me to become the first Black woman to ever be a council to New York City mayor. I say yes, because I see the opportunity to actually do more for our community if I say yes. So I do. Now, I get there and there's this title called Director of Women and Minority-Owned Business Enterprises. I get given the title. There's no staff and there's no budget.
Wow.
And you know what I said? Cool. Because what I did then was the spend was 500 million when I came into that position. I got it up to $1.6 billion in spend the first year, matched it the second year, but the whole time I was also building the infrastructure and capacity. Hired Janelle Doris, who comes out of 100 Black Men, to be a full-time MWB director that then formulates what becomes the office of MWBE, which had never existed before in the mayor's office. But the other thing I did, because I just had to try to get the money spent right away, get it out to dollars. But I said, we have to see how we're doing with our dollars. So I commissioned a disparity study. And then it was underway when I left government because I voted with my feet in 2016. It is the disparity study I commissioned that is the one telling us how badly we're doing so that the attention of government can be focused on doing a whole lot better. Because if we're not willing to look at the data and see how we're doing, we can just say we spent $1.6 billion. I was happy we spent $1.6 billion. And then the data comes out and you're like, see? We have to do better. And I'm always going to be the kind of leader and always have been that says, we know what our intent is. And we have to move forward with that vision and intent. And then we have to track and keep ourselves accountable to whether or not we're meeting it. And so I'm going to push for $1 million in discretionary spending. That takes legislation from the state, something I fought for when I was the director of MWB, and we got and it needs to get increased. But we're also going to make sure that we continue to have MWB officers in every single department, but now that are tracking and accountable to meeting our MWB goals that is representative of our businesses. And we can't forget, and this is what I'm going to lean hard into, bully pulpit. The mayor has to be the bully pulpit for the contracts getting done. And I will be that bully pulpit. Because I'm also the person who have food put on the table because my mother was able to get the contracts to do affirmative action programming with government.
Hmm. Really appreciate that. The next thing I want to go into is housing. Southeast Queens is pretty unique in that we have Black homeowners, we have Black renters, and then we also have night shift buildings, but we also have non-night shift buildings like Rochdale Village.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could just share with us, when elected or if elected mayor, rather, can you talk about your plan to help and support renters and homeowners? Because what we saw like a list of cascading consequences, rather, because in Southeast Queens, you have Black homeowners who are renting. And, we had this, rental freeze that we had, which affected, properties of Black homeowners. So as mayor, how would you attack that issue to help renters, homeowners, people who live in night shift, and also people who live in Rochdale Village?
And I'll tell you, this question is actually one of the things that propelled me to run.
Wow.
I have a godson who lives in public housing, who I brought to come live with me for a while to try to help him get through high school. My own daughters wonder how they're going to be able to afford the rent and stay in the city they were born in and that they don't want to leave. I've seen all ends of this problem. So first of all, it's going to be taking all that you just said and seeing it as one housing strategy, because it is homeownership. It is affordable rents we can actually afford, and holding on to our affordable housing, which is Mitchell-Lama and public housing. So one of the ways, so I'll just say three things, because of course I'm going to pull all the resources and levers and powers of government to get this done. But in a nutshell, I got a $10 billion capital construction plan that's going to create 100,000 new jobs. We're going to do local targeted hiring so more of our people get those jobs. We do need money in our pockets to pay the rent. So we do need jobs and good jobs. And there's going to be a lot of union jobs in that for Black folks. But I am also going to make that deeply affordable housing, because that capital construction budget is to build things we need built and fix things we need fixed. So that's going to be a budget. I'm increasing it by $2 billion to get more affordable housing built. And that includes leveraging things like the 1,000 acres of city-owned land that typically the city's just selling off to the private sector. I'm not going to sell it off. I'm going to partner with not-for-profit housing developers to create 100% permanently affordable housing. But the other thing is that $2 billion of that $10 billion I've earmarked for public housing. And I've said I'm going to keep public housing public, because that is a precious resource for permanent affordability. And I am going to make sure that tenants of public housing have a say in priorities and what gets fixed first and how it gets fixed. And I'm working with Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, who has endorsed me, but has also been a powerhouse leader, along now with Chuck Schumer, Senator Gillibrand, and so many others, to bring another $30 to $40 billion to New York City alone to fix our public housing. So I'm working on that because that keeps it public. But now in terms of homeowners, look, we've got to be honest and acknowledge the property taxes are discriminatory. People of color in the city pay more based on assessed value than white people who are wealthy. And we have to shift that. It's just an unfair system. And I'm going to make it a progressive tax system so that property taxes come down for our homeowners and so that it's a fair property tax. But the other thing that I've been very explicit about is this deed theft and these other forms of loss that we have seen in our communities. And we've seen it also here in Central Brooklyn. I know you had it in Southeast Queens. So I'm actually going to increase not just financial literacy and the partnership with organizations that support homeowners to be able to protect themselves, but also some of the legal services and advocacy necessary to create more protections, both legislatively and in terms of legal strategies for homeowners, so our homes aren't stolen from us. And work with the federal government on some of the mortgage programs we need to create more homeowners. And I'm very clear, I got through law school because of Mitchell-Lama. Wow. And as a baby, my parents and I, as a baby, we lived in Mitchell-Lama apartments. It's part of how, I was able to afford to be here in New York City. We've lost 20,000 units of Mitchell-Lama housing. We have to preserve that affordability. That does mean we have to work with Albany, and I'm going to be the mayor that's going to be a partner with residents to get what we need out of Albany to make sure we're preserving this housing and also increasing our opportunities to control it.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I'll add to close this part of our conversation is there are millennials in Southeast Queens who are basically being priced out, who can't even afford to live in the communities that they have. And I guess one thing that I'm hoping that, if you do become mayor, is to really have a sit-down conversation with Black millennials who are really in desperate need of housing. As you know, there's a lot of variables to that, too much to get into today, but just keeping that, please keep that in your purview.
Absolutely. That's like, as I said, my own kids, and they're lucky ones, don't know how they can afford to stay in the city. So we have to solve it, and we need all levels of government to solve it together.
So I know we're coming down to the end, and there was two issues that I really wanted to touch on. So I guess I'm just going to combine them both. I think one, if you could share with us your vision for education. Obviously, education in Southeast Queens is something that's really sensitive in our community. We're striving for equity in resources, et cetera. Could you talk about, I guess your vision for education and what you will do in the first 100 days to change? And I think the last topic that's sensitive to me is public safety. And the reason I bring public safety to you, personal experience, I had a friend of mine, his name is John Jeff, who was murdered viciously on Springfield Boulevard last August. He was a corrections officer, but he was murdered. Public safety is very important for us. And, at the same time, if we see the political climate now where, a lot of protests and a lot of different things around how law enforcement treats Black folks. So I guess what I want to hear from you is, what's your vision for public safety, and is there a balance in between? And, we've heard a lot of people talk about defund the police. What does defund the police mean to you? Because there's different interpretations of what that is.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the public safety question first, because it
Sure.
also overlaps with education.
Sure.
So first of all, I've been Black all my life. That means two things. I know what it's like to fear crime, and I know what it's like to fear the police. And it is simply a lie that we have to choose one of those. We don't. But here's what it takes. It takes mayoral control of the police department. And I will have mayoral control of the police department. And what I mean by that is we are going to right size it. We are going to right size it. That means we're going to focus policing on the jobs of the police department. Keeping illegal guns out of our communities, off our streets is a perfect example. We've also seen a radical increase in rapes, which we don't even talk about. 30% rise in rapes since COVID. So there are clearly things that we have to be very mindful that we need our police focused on, but that requires a partnership, and I call it putting the people back in public safety, where people can direct what the priorities of policing are and what we need police focused on. And it is going to be following the rules of the road, which will be very clear what you can and cannot do, and clear accountability. If you go off-roading, you will be disciplined. And if you are off-roading in a serious enough way, you will be fired. But part of right-sizing policing is recognizing that we have been growing the size of the police department budget even when we didn't need to add more police officers. That's just the honest truth. We've let fear drive budgeting that didn't make any sense for the problems we were trying to solve. I'll give you one example. Mike Bloomberg, when he was mayor, used to brag that if his police force was an army, it would be 7th in the world.
Wow.
Well, we're a city. We don't need to compete with global powers, armies, with our police force. That's not safety. And what that's meant is we haven't invested in the things we actually need that help us support more opportunities for our people. We need it to be easier to get a job than a gun in our communities. So I am going to take $1 billion from the New York City Police Department budget, which is bloated. It is $1 billion, and that does not include the $1 billion that we spend out of our general fund for police misconduct. We spend $1 billion over 3 years for all the stuff the police get wrong. Well, so we're going to take that money taken out because we're not just going to keep increasing the size of the force. We're going to take it out in incoming classes, but we're going to invest it so that in our schools, we have trauma-informed care, because that story you just told is traumatizing. And our kids are traumatized. They're traumatized by COVID at this point and online learning. They're also traumatized by violence. And that trauma actually impacts educational attainment. And we know that when we put trauma-informed care in the schools, we bring violence down and we send graduation rates up. That's an investment that has a return that we need for our communities. But I'm also going to double the number of summer youth employment in communities that have high rates of crime. Double. And I'm going to align our workforce development dollars so that we're creating career tracks for our kids. But I'm also going to create participatory justice funds. So just like we do participatory budgeting, $18 million of those of that budget that I'm pulling out of the police department, I'm going to put in the hands of communities to say, what is it that you need so you can direct the dollars? So if it's more after school programs, if it's different kinds of violence interruption, if it's whatever is needed, because every community is different in terms of what community needs, but I know that communities are expert in what they need. So I'm going to create more power with communities to direct those dollars. And that's all already touching on education, right? Because what I want are our schools to be places with one, where we're no longer overcrowded. That's why I'm going to spend $250 million by hiring 2,500 new teachers. And I am going to work on diversifying our teachers, because that also increases educational opportunity, bringing down class sizes. The trauma-informed care is critical, but I'm going to make sure there's a social worker in every school and a nurse in every school. I'm going to end discriminatory admissions practices. And for the first time, this city is getting fair student funding is fully funded. That means our ability to direct dollars to the schools that need those dollars the most. And I'm going to be the mayor that's going to be very attentive to making sure the dollars get distributed in the way that they need to be distributed. And that means our communities.
Thank you so much. And I think our members, we really appreciate you taking time out on the campaign trail to come speak with us. And I think my last question would be, please promise that no matter what happens, that you still come back and really talk to our membership, because we're really interested in, connecting further. And I wish you the best of luck. I'm looking forward to connecting and working with you in whatever capacity and what happens. And I think I speak for our membership when I say we really appreciate you coming in and giving us a lens from a woman's view, and I think that's important. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. Look, I'm the one who's grateful for the opportunity to hear from you. And I think what is critically important is not only will I be back, I'll be back and I'll be Black.
Yes, ma'am.
Won't that be refreshing in a mayor?
Thank you. Thank you so much, and good luck to you. And it's very
Thank
important.
you, and be safe and well. And I look forward to working with you.